And again, the assessment in this task is your post-assessment after your lesson. So step 2 is after you've taught your lesson, the big focus is on not the lesson itself, but on the assessment that you give after the lesson. Doesn't matter really what happened during the lesson. All you're focusing on is the assessment data and what it's telling you. So, with that in mind, for step 2, you are going to create some kind of graphic representation of your data from your assessment. So it can be a spreadsheet, it can be a pie chart, it can be a narrative, like a list of things that they answered with check marks next to how many answered certain ways. However you're going to display your data so that you can get a snapshot of the entire class or the whole group of students that you assessed for step 2. You administer the assessment and then record it in some kind of graphic representation. And that is completely open to whatever makes sense for your data. But it needs to be included as an artifact, and you will analyze that data for the entire class for step 2. So the prompt for this question, there's 3 parts to it. Based on your baseline data and your pre-assessment and your post data shown in your graphic representation, so your pre-test and your post-test, analyze to see if your students plural, the whole class, progressed toward the learning goal. Based on your baseline, pre-assessment, and your post-assessment, you can see that 90% of the students grew in their understanding of nonsense words or something like that. So you're going to analyze the assessment data based on your baseline data pre-test and your data from your assessment post-test. B is just talking about how efficient was your process. Did it work well? Did the way you collect data, was it efficient? Did it work? Did it make sense? And give examples to support that analysis. So this is going to be reflecting on your process. And then C, describe how you engage students in analyzing their own assessment results to help them understand their progress. Did you have little mini conferences with the students? Did you write them a note on their paper giving them specific feedback? Did you have them analyze their own assessment and grade it? How did you engage students towards their learning goals? So that is another important part. Excuse me. And if it's not something you do on a regular basis, you do need to do it for this specific task. How are you going to get students involved in their own assessment to help them understand their progress? 2.2.2, the second part of part 2 of task 2, lots of 2's, is your analysis and assessment of just your 2 focus students. So the first text box was on your whole class. This text box is on your focus students, FS1 and FS2. So again, you have 3 questions based on your baseline pre-assessment data and your graphical post-assessment data. What impact of the modification did you actually see? Did it work? Did what you do actually help you understand what the 2 focus students know and have learned in this lesson? And make sure you cite those examples, give specifics. You're going to cite evidence from their actual assessments to support whether or not they actually did progress towards the goal, and any other related data. So if they were engaged in a class conversation during the lesson or after, or if you had a conversation with them after the lesson and you heard them talking about the information in a different way, that could be related data. So you are going to just tell me how those 2 focus students did towards the learning goal, what impact the modifications specifically made, and if they didn't make any impact, that's totally fine. Just make sure that whatever you write here, you give it a support for. And then, just like before, how did you engage those 2 focus students in analyzing their own assessment? How did you get them involved? And the artifacts for this one are the assessment. Again, assessment is post-assessment for your 2 focus students. And it says maximum of 1 page. If your assessment is 2 pages long, you can upload 2 pages, but only 1 page will actually be looked at by the graders, me in this case. So it doesn't have to be a 1-page assessment, but you only need to upload 1 page of the assessment. And that is the end of part 2.